Welcome to the Identity Work Podcast. If you are a high achiever struggling to find purpose in work, then join us as we discover how to create more meaning in work and life. And welcome to another episode of the Identity Work Podcast. We are joined by our first three-peat guest. Emma Wood is here for the hat trick tonight. Emma, we are so excited to have you, and we're here to discuss a new book. You did not write it, but you read it. And we're going to pick your brain about it, because if Adam were to write a book, this would be the title of it. So it is called How to Live a Meaningful Life Using Design Thinking to Unlock Purpose, Joy, and Flow Every Single Day. I'm in purpose, joy, and flow every single day. It's written by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, who have some connections to Stanford, where Emma went to twice. So with that long wind up, Emma, welcome back. Adam.
Thank you. I am so happy to be back. I love these conversations with you too.
We'd like to welcome, we were selling the podcast in this episode to everybody at the wedding that Emma and I were at this last weekend in Charlottesville. So we would like to welcome all of our new listeners.
Yeah,
David,
there
Hannah,
we go.
Shelby, and more. So welcome to the
Congratulations,
to the podcast.
Lindsay and AJ.
Yes. Shout out to the bride and groom who are on their way to Sardinia. Did you go there, Adam, during your sabbatical?
I've never been to Sardinia, but it sounds like it's like a long enough word that it sounds like it has to be amazing.
It's pretty beautiful. Yeah, the Italian would be Sardinia, Sardinia in English, and it's beautiful.
Okay, so this book, Emma, first maybe like the catalyst. Why did you pick it up? Besides being a super fan of the podcasts and exploring these topics as one of the best executive coaches in the world, what made you pick up this book?
Yeah. So Dave and Bill teach at Stanford. They created the Stanford D School. And so design thinking, they have a well-known book and class at Stanford that I took and then TA'd called Designing Your Life. That's really how do you apply design thinking principles to creating your life, creating your career. And I love the approach it takes of really building your way forward step by step. And design thinking is all about prototyping and experimentation and just learning and curiosity, just kind of the opposite of like what you often get at, say, MBA programs of like, let me masterfully architect everything and then hope it works. And of course, things go sideways in life, things change, things evolve, or one of the biggest hangups in undergrad often for people and that they talk about in Designing Your Life or DYL is people are like, well, what's your passion? And just find your passion. And most people don't actually know their passion. And it's like, oh, shoot. Well, come back to me once you found it. And actually that there are a lot of other approaches for how do you build in meaning. And so this book, How to Live a Meaningful Life, was their second book that just came out earlier this year, like 10, 15 years after the first book. And applies design thinking again, but to just more broadly, what does it mean to live a meaningful life? And they've got some pretty radical takes compared to what you hear in a lot of different books. So in the first chapter, they basically throw out impact as being the compass for how to live a meaningful life, which is a former management consultant. Stephen, maybe you have this reaction too. You're like, I thought impact was the North Star. They
Two
also kind of
buzzwords in
debunk
one sentence.
Yeah.
North Star and impact. I love it.
There you go. They also kind of debunk Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I had not known this before, but he actually added another tier onto his hierarchy of needs late in his life. And so just some of these things and really about how meaning is not something you earn and it's not something you find. It's something that you design and build sort of step by step and that can really shift around. So I think I was excited for the book to come out and it did not disappoint.
Great. Let's dive into some of those. Let's dive into the first topic of debunking, because I think, which I've talked about, a fear is, of not having as much influence or impact as I should. And I think when we look at successful lives, it's not even always correlated to money. It's correlated to impact.
Mhm.
And so to debunk that as like a key to a meaningful life, what was kind of the takeaways there?
Yeah, and actually, I'll add in one more kind of hot or radical take that's part of that is they also take issue with fulfillment. And so if you suddenly take out impact and fulfillment, it's like, "Oh my goodness." Um, and really it's saying instead of impact, that impact can kind of be a trap often if it's more transactional, it's more temporary, it can be in some ways more binary versus actually can you find meaning in sort of individual moments and pieces of life. Same with fulfillment is sort of the premise that you could ever be filled. And they're like, as a human, you're never done, you're never full. And we all have many more lives that we could live than we'll ever have time for. And so instead of looking for fulfillment and impact, can you look for meaning and being fully alive? And from there, it's kind of like they call it the particularity, I think, of kind of individual moments where you don't need anything out there to be different. And I think that's somewhat of impact too, is like so much of it is outside of you and out of your control versus what do you shift when you're finding meaning and purpose in any individual moment. And they talk a lot about flow in the book. They talk a lot about wonder and coherence. And so using those as sort of the tools to build more meaning. I mean, title of the book is like how to live a meaningful life. They're not saying get rid of meaning. It's just not viewing it through that narrower and more transactional lens of impact or I'm going to be fulfilled at some point.
What is the definition of impact we're talking about here? I definitely have. I feel like I've had sort of a similar, I don't know, realization or processing. And the way that I've thought about it, you can tell me if like this aligns with how to live a meaningful life, or if this is like a totally different point for a different book that I have read in the past. Is that like the end result, or like the problem I'm trying to solve for me is less important than am I learning and growing, is like the way that I would frame it. And I think a lot of the lore around meaningful life is around like picking the right problem that you're solving, something that is like, makes your heart come alive, insert whatever flowery, mystical language that you like discover, and
Hmm.
then all of a sudden every day feels amazing. It sounds like what you're describing of impact is maybe more like quantification. Is that the right way to think about it? Is like I want to see like X dollars of growth, or like I want to individually contribute 1,000 wells in some developing country, or like, whatever the impact, but it's more like I want to be able to hold it and count it. And that's sort of where people go
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly how they defined it in the book, and it's not my book. But from my perspective, it probably would be more like what you just described, Adam. And often people are like, okay, what was the impact I had on a business? Or did I transform an industry? Like, what's my legacy? What would somebody write
Hmm.
in the papers about me or put in my obituary? And not only is that maybe more transactional, more outside of you, um, it's also often pretty abstract and nebulous. And so, even like in your day to day, can be hard to hold on to and sometimes find that moment to moment meaning in.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. It definitely, for me, is that idea has, I feel like, sounds really good when written on LinkedIn, but
Hmm.
Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. feels very distant from the reality of what I'm doing. Is like, um, I always felt, and maybe this is not true if I was like eye to eye with the person who
Hmm.
I was impacting, or like, hands on the fence, building the fence myself. But something about computer work where like ultimately I'm building software, that software is being bought by a CFO, and that CFO is providing that software to like an end user that's then using it to like drill wells in Africa. It feels like I didn't help drill wells in Africa. I was like 5 steps removed from that whole journey
Yeah.
happening. And so it's always felt like more in name than actual felt experience for me.
Yeah. Agreed. Or like I worked in the pet industry before becoming a coach, and we were trying to make pets' lives better through higher quality treats and supplements and things like that. And like I loved the mission. I adore my dog. And there were times that, like, okay, if you're negotiating a contract for packaging, do you actually feel that in the felt sense versus like intellectually, I can try and talk myself into it.
So if kind of the what are we to do thing, it sounds like the authors talk a lot about living in the moment. And I think that's, Adam, something you've talked about too. How, yeah, it's easy to say that, and on a Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., it's like harder to figure out how to like craft meaning in the moment. And maybe it's well, yeah. What are some of your takeaways, like, or even just thoughts on like how to do that?
Yeah. I mean, some of the things that they focus on here, and that actually, I mean, it tracks to a lot of other work that I've done, books that I've read, even that get far more kind of philosophical or spiritual around like wonder is such a powerful force. And sort of it's a different flavor of curiosity, but can I really look at the world with wonder and seek that out? And one of the things that I think we've talked about on one of our previous episodes, but is how much our brain filters what we see. And they summed it up really nicely in the book. I'm going to steal it because they put it very, very concisely of you don't see what you're looking at, you see what you're looking for. And so there it's like, okay, if I'm looking for problems, I'm going to see problems. If I'm looking for things that are going well, I'm going to see things that are going well. And I'm more likely to keep seeing things that are going well. So consciously choosing to kind of look for wonder. Um, they also talk a lot about coherence and, can I, and creating sort of like what are your values and drafting your compass. I also like that they talk about how your compass may evolve over time. I feel like sometimes we get locked into like, what are your values? What are your compass? And if they change, that's a bad thing versus like, no, we're evolving human beings. But at any given moment, do you know what your values are, what your compass is, and how are you living in coherence with that? And then that transactional versus flow. And they build on some of the science behind flow by, I never remember how to pronounce
Good
his
luck.
very long, it's Mihai, something with a C. Wonderful book on flow. And just how you can kind of find flow in any moment too. And I think one of the ways that we distract ourselves often is being so focused on productivity. And even like, okay, if I'm cooking dinner, am I listening to a podcast as well? Versus what if I were to spend 20 minutes chopping onions and like just really focus on the experience of chopping onions
Unless it's
or
this
go for a walk
podcast,
outside?
then
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
this podcast. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should also definitely have like 8 sub-agents operating while you're chopping the onions, so never moments
Yeah.
are wasted, of course.
That way, when you're listening to the podcast, you can also be checking in on the agents as you're like stirring a pot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Uh,
Cool.
no, it's really good. I love this idea I love the idea of wonder. I I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, but a spiritual director that I worked with a couple years ago had a quote that has like really stuck with me for many years. Which is the opposite of love isn't hate, it's hurry. And I think that makes me sit with this like it's impossible to love when you're in a state of rushedness. Like love sort of exists in this space of slowness. And I think wonder is probably very similar to love. Like I think you could say that same sentence of like the opposite of wonder is hurry. Um like I was trying to envision me tomorrow, Wednesday morning, showing up to work and having a moment of wonder in my job. It was very hard to imagine having a moment of wonder, knowing the, you know, whatever 12 things on my to-do list where I'm certainly going to only get 4 of those things done. Um, how do you like try to experience wonder? Maybe that's the exact opposite way to phrase that question,
Mm,
or wrong way to phrase that question. But like, how do you go about experiencing wonder in a normal workday?
yeah. Parts of it are slowing down and not multitasking because the more you can be present, I think the more you can experience that. Also, just if you're consciously looking for it, or again, noticing what are my like constant thought patterns and beliefs. For example, if I'm always looking for the way that things might go wrong, like can I imagine the way things might go right too? And like, yes, I don't know they'll go right, but I also don't know they'll go wrong. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So can I at least just entertain that and see how I might be positively surprised by things? And then I think there's also a piece here around just sort of surrender. And this is where maybe like some of how they describe flow, I think taps into the way that other people might describe trusting the universe and sort of tapping into that. And how do I co create versus just trying to control everything? It's really hard to have any wonder if you're in full control mode. But can I release a little bit of that and just get curious? And the more that I can get curious and open to being surprised, I think the easier it is to experience wonder. I'll never forget when I was 18, I nannied for twin 1.5-year-old boys. Talk about a hard
No
job.
wonder you're so good with kids.
But I remember one day going to the playground with that, and they were standing up. There were like all these bark chips, and they just like bent down, picked up 2 handfuls of bark chips, stood up, threw them down, and just laughed. And they did that for like 30 minutes. And it's just this like, wow, how wild is it to be alive and have these things called bark chips? And almost like giving yourself permission as an adult that like things don't have to be serious or impressive or what should you be enjoying versus just, can I find a little bit more pleasure and joy in what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, kids are really good at wonder. That's definitely like, all my good examples of that over the last year are certainly just watching my daughter do something for the first time and like love it and think, wow, I haven't been like fascinated by straws in maybe ever. It's definitely been 30 years since I was fascinated by straws, but
Yeah.
she's like obsessed with a straw. So
Yeah.
cool.
So it's just like,
But
oh
then how
my
can we
God,
be
we're
fascinated?
alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the meeting, but maybe we can be fascinated with the people who are on the call. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the wonder feels like a very big and almost like intimidating word to me, but like curiosity and surprise, I think feel maybe more approachable. They're like the like elementary school version of the like college undergrad wonder. Where I feel like tapping into like how can I be more curious? How can I like create an openness to experience surprise? I feel like I can do
Yeah.
that. I can be curious about someone in this meeting. And I can be like delighted by the surprise of someone willing to help me on some project that didn't have to help me on the project or something like that. And I think probably that rhythm starts to build the undergrad wonder at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, am I willing to be in the moment and see what arises? Similar with finite versus infinite games. A finite game, you're trying to win. An infinite game, you're trying to just keep playing. And so if you look at a meeting as, what's the outcome, what is winning the meeting versus, wow, we're getting to do this work. How cool is that? Our caveman ancestors would probably think this is like completely wild.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I had a reflection on that this morning. Actually, I was thinking about how much emotional energy that I exert thinking about meaningful work. We like have this whole podcast and newsletter and like all
Hi.
these things, and like that is just like a question that no one asked in the entire history of humankind until like I don't know, 200 or 300 years ago, maybe. That they were like able to be like, I'm like frustrated because I'm not emotionally satisfied enough by my job. People are
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm just trying to grow potatoes and eat. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and now we get to, spend hours a week debating the right
Yeah.
approach to meaningful work.
And if you
It's
can take,
awesome.
instead of being like, God, why do I take it so seriously? Just like, how funny is that?
Yeah. What a
And like,
delight
how
that we get to do
hilarious
that.
and ridiculous, and what a delight. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great example too. And yeah, instead of feeling bad or hard on yourself too. It's like, yeah, like, wow, we get to, talk about it and we get to have more choices in our career than a lot of people. I think that just made some of this conversation come alive of like how in a little thing can you spark a little bit of wonder. So I think, Emma, the concept of surrender is interesting too. When we were at dinner, my wife asked us like, "What's the biggest thing I've learned from the coaching sessions with Emma?" And I said it's like surrendering the timeline, but not the vision. Is probably my meta takeaway from our coaching call. And I think Emma, even in a newsletter you wrote about, which we'll talk a little bit more, you wrote that's a classic type A, classic high achiever, kind of classic target audience of our listeners. It's hard for you to admit how much is actually in our control.
or
And
not in our control.
yeah, how much is not in our control. There we go.
Little Freudian slip there, even now,
Yeah, I
Stephen.
guess this non-alcoholic blue moon's really getting to me. Um, um yeah, can you talk about that? Because yeah, that's something I think has been an epiphany for me, and it's just interesting kind of to hear it from you as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think so often we're trying to control everything. And to some extent, that suffocates it. Or if we try and release control or release attachment, it's like, okay, then I just have to completely let go and sort of be, apathetic or not care. And that's not really the opposite, kind of, Adam, of how you were like, the opposite of love isn't hate. It's actually this other thing. It's the same as like the opposite of attachment isn't like complete apathy and detachment. It's holding things more lightly and sort of saying, okay, what is mine to do? And then what is, whether it's chance, the universe, God, like whatever you believe in. And so, how do you kind of hold your vision and show up to do your part, but then surrender to like the future is unknown and there are plenty of things that are out of your control. So even like one of the like ways I like to visualize this is if you imagine like picking up sand, if you're at the beach, if you are like gripping onto it really tight, most of the sand is going to like fall through your hands, right? But similarly, like if you're like, okay, I'm just not going to hold it at all, you're also not going to have any sand. In fact, you're going to have even less sand than trying to control because there's a lot you can white knuckle through. Versus like, okay, what is mine to hold? Can I cut my palms and hold the sand there? Some of it will fall through, some of it will stay there. And if, sand were to fall from the sky, I can receive more. I'm open to that. And so I think that's that balance of like, what is my part for you, Stephen? It's how do you hold the vision? How do you keep showing up day after day, but not getting caught in like, it has to go exactly a certain way. And if it doesn't, I've failed and I'm going to grip tighter.
It's a powerful image.
Yeah.
I feel like we need that on what are those kind of old school '90s motivational posters that were in every office of like perseverance, and there's a bald eagle and a
The
definition.
stones and the rocks and the pebbles and the sand, and they're all being filled up.
I
Classic
need
metaphor.
that. I need that every day. No, it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful mental model and analogy to describe this principle.
Yeah. Yeah. So co-creation in a way.
What say you, Adam?
It's good. I'm intimately familiar with this metaphor because I've heard my wife repeat that metaphor from the retreat that she went on with you. Like every single time she's ever talked about the retreat, it's always been like, "This is what I learned. I learned this thing about sand. Let me teach you." And she's shared this like metaphor with whatever strangers in a coffee shop that wants to listen to this story about the sand in the hands. So
Love it.
I do think that the metaphor is really powerful and like represents it's a really clear, simple image that I think particularly when Christy like experienced the actual holding of the sand, I think
Physically
really made
doing
it
it.
like felt the physicality of that I think really like attached her to the metaphor in a powerful way. Um yeah, I think it like is really clear and it makes a lot of sense. I think it's particularly interesting. Christy she's a hold it tight person. I think she would say, obviously, when you open your hands, you get no sand, but if you hold it
Yeah.
tight, you can keep them around for longer, but
Yep,
um,
but only a little
the
bit.
cup is only a little bit. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think the metaphor makes a lot of sense. I certainly am the same, but I think like increasingly more and more open handed to the things that are going on, and I think my if there were if my life was many different components, I think work is probably the one where I'm still the most like, you know, my hands are like slowly opening, but it's like a little bit of a journey. But in other areas of life, like, I don't know, like relationships and finances and marriage and parenting and these things, I think I am more naturally open handed or I'm like a little further in the journey of like walking through life open handed. And it's helpful for me to even almost visualize being in different places in different areas of life because it gives me hope that like the work area can also one
Mhm.
day get to that because I know that I can be open in some area of life and thus can do it in all areas of life eventually. So um, yeah, I don't know. I found that to be like encouraging to sort of see myself in compartments and see where I'm further along in different areas in those compartments. Gives me hope for the whole person.
Mhm. And even one thing I love about design thinking is you don't need to make the leap at once. So you don't need to figure it all out first. It's like, what's one little step or one little experiment? And so even for you, Adam, of like, okay, you're already seeing it in other areas of your life. So you have some of that belief. What's like one little step you could take on the work front to just play with that?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
rhetorical. You have to answer that.
I will answer that. I would be curious to just like pass the mic around on that one and hear, little tidbits and advice from both of y'all. I think that something I'm something that has made significant progress in work that has had far more impact than just like the tiny task would sound is writing down 3 things I'm grateful for every morning, and those things tend to gravitate towards being work related. Just like being grateful that, some coworker helped me on some project or grateful that I like, get to work from my house or whatever like tiny elements. I've found that consistently writing down, like forcing myself to be grateful for the circumstance has made the speed at which my heart turns towards gratitude. And I think from gratitude, you it's a lot easier to experience the like openness and curiosity and surprise and wonder experiences that we've talked about. And so I think that's been a helpful practice that I have been doing for a while and has had great benefit. Something that I'm actively trying to do like so hard and really just like do well one day and fall flat on my face the next day, but I'm gonna say as my opportunity for growth or like the thing that I would recommend or I'm trying to do is trying to schedule my morning out in the morning
Uh-huh.
and not and be realistic with that, like and like put space
Okay.
in there for like a lunch where I don't work and I just sit outside and look at a tree and listen to a bird for like 10 minutes. Basically, like, trying to force space into the day and not just live in a space of always having 10 things sitting on my to-do list slowly crushing me has been I think it creates more space for the openness experience. So that's what I would like to do a better job of.
Are you open to a little push on that?
Yeah, sure. Bring it on.
Uh,
Pitch
I
mode
still
activated.
I still hear a lot of control and shoulds in there of like even the word you use of force, like can I force some more space into my schedule? Can I still control my experience, but just control it to be something slightly different where I listen to birds instead of I'm totally overwhelmed? Which, not to diminish that
Yeah.
stuff, like it's a great step towards being more present and wonder. And what would actually a little bit more just flexibility or being present with what is look like instead of trying to control and still architect everything out?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good push. I think if I'm honest with myself, flexibility looks like being just like blown tornado face down into concrete, I think is generally what like flexibility in the
Okay.
day looks like. Is like if I just like allow the day to dictate, um yeah, there just feels like a really strong counterforce that's gonna seize the control in a way that's like makes me feel very stressed. So
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's like
And that's kind of the open.
embracing the face down to go full apathy mode. It's like embrace, just like let your face get thrown against the stone. I don't know. That's
Maybe.
probably not right either.
Or what does the holding it, but holding it loosely look like too?
Yeah.
Can you play with already
Yeah.
having enough in a given moment?
Yeah. I think it's something for me to think about for sure of what that would look like in the middle of the storm. I
Hmm.
think I think that I hold it well, very well before 9 a.m.
Hmm.
and I hold it like, you know, moderately well an hour and a half after I've stopped my workday when I've had like some decompression time and I'm reflecting. Like I do sort of look back and think, 5 years ago I would have looked back, I think, in just pure like self criticism on the day, and now I look back with more sort of like appreciation for some small moments that I experienced, and I don't know, like gratitude for some of the things that happened, and like an acceptance of like, oh, I was, I tried hard and that meeting just like didn't go very well, and that's okay. I
Hmm.
I had lots of stuff that I was doing and didn't have, I didn't have the time to exert to like plan for that very well, or some sort of like reflective, positive reflections, or um, I don't know, contented reflections. But in the middle at like 2 p.m., I don't know, it just feels really,
Yeah.
it feels like a battle. Like I'm
Yeah.
either gonna get punched in the face or I'm gonna like create 10 minutes to listen to a bird, and I'd rather do the latter.
Totally. Well, and I think also at least my sense over here, as you were talking about that, is like, I want to create 10 minutes to listen to a bird. That to me felt very different than like I'm forcing this block in my schedule because I should do that. And so maybe it's the want over should of like, yeah,
Mm,
I want to go outside and eat lunch and listen to the birds.
yeah, yeah. It's a fair reframing. Um, I'm probably biased. It's just like more aggressive language. Christy would say that about me. Is I
Mhm.
I'm an extreme. I verbalize in extreme ways often, and that is just genuinely like I think it's really fun to
Mhm.
sit outside and like enjoy nature and see what's
Mhm.
going on. So, um, it's a happy thing that I get to do, that I'm excited to do, and I want to
Mhm.
be able to create space for that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to press in a little bit to Adam. You talked about writing down kind of three things you're thankful for. Emma, this is something you've talked and and written about too. Is um, appreciation and gratitude, and as a tool to live in the present, and which is kind of the thesis of the book and what we've been talking about of living in the present. Can you talk a little bit about that, Emma? Either what the book talks about it or kind of what your own reflections. And Emma gave us permission to share too. Her grandma, who she's really close with, is on hospice care, and so Emma's been spending a lot of time with her out in Long Island, and kind of reflecting on life during a really hard season. And so some of this conversation is kind of spurred from that recent experience too. So thanks for your vulnerability and willing to share about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so much of gratitude is, again, it's not needing anything out there to be different. Like, do I wish my grandmother didn't have cancer? Yes. And I can either focus on that or I can choose to turn towards being present in like, I still have her now, probably not for very long, but do I want to lose that by being angry or in denial? And, you know, I've had all of those emotions, grief, anger, denial, everything. And so not stuffing that down, I think let it flow, but then also choose what what is meaningful, and again, what's happening in the present. So like I haven't lost her yet. Um, and I'm incredibly grateful for the time that we've had. Um, and she's really inspirational to me of how much she focuses on gratitude in everything she has versus things that she's lost. And she's had some big tragedies in her life and has always come back to how am I blessed? How am I blessed? For her, she is religious. And so her connection with God is super important there too. Uh, One thing that was interesting for me in the book was actually how they talked about gratitude practices. And that, there's a lot of research behind gratitude in the positive psychology movement, super powerful, but they like teased out a slightly more nuanced view than I've maybe heard before of often a gratitude journaling practice is pretty transactional. Like, I'm grateful for the roof over my head. I'm grateful that my spouse brought me flowers. And how do you bring that back more into the sort of relational and present moment? And even appreciation, I say, is often more like traits and qualities versus just things that you have. So it might be I'm really appreciating the sense of security that I have. I really appreciate, you know, the warm relationship with my spouse and that, they were thinking about me today. And that can really deepen that practice.
Hmm. I hadn't heard of that nuance before. That's good.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely got me thinking about what are the ways that I still do that. Uh, and how do you go to that deeper layer?
Adam, anything there? Otherwise, time flies when we're having fun. I wanna jump to what they talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs being updated, but that's a big jump.
No, I think it's really good. Something for me to reflect on in my gratitude practice that I'm up to in the mornings. So we'll uh we'll implement 12 hours from now.
10, right? Probably get up pretty early. Yeah. All right. Maslow's I can't talk tonight, clearly. Hierarchy of needs. Why
Yeah,
was it updated? What got added?
yeah. So in the original hierarchy, he had, and I just found it again, physiological needs, safety and security, love and belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization. And really, I may not fully remember exactly how they cover this in the book, but it's sort of like, do you have to get to a certain destination and then is that static? And that's not really something you get to, and is maybe more limited. So he actually added, um, and it's sort of a like, how much can you just be optimized? So he added towards the end of his life, self transcendence. And, one line that I'd highlighted in the book is this final insight from Maslow frees us from the impossible task of attaining a fully realized, fully optimized self and sends us on a very different journey. With self transcendence, the goal switches from optimizing the self to moving towards something bigger than yourself, which leads us right back to wonder and mystery.
I like getting back to wonder and mystery.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, especially us type A high achievers, it is all about optimization. And so there is something like freeing. Even like when I think about vacations, it's like, oh, it's so rare. We have to use the time and like, but then it puts pressure and then you don't enjoy the moment. And so there's a little bit of like yeah, exhale of thinking about that. There's a good book. It's in the faith community too, but called The Beauty of Self Forgetfulness. uh,
Yeah.
um, which is yeah, which it kind of made me think about that too.
Mm-hmm.
Is in the sixth hierarchy pyramid edition, do they make the point or the anti-point that self-actualization is a prerequisite to self-transcendence?
That's a good. I don't remember on that or no. I mean, based on the pyramid, one would think that at least Maslow viewed it as that of like, if do you become actualized and then transcend and just it's another level? But I think Bill and Dave probably would make the point of the you can't ever be fully self-actualized as a human, similar to that line that I just read of, we're not a machine to be fully optimized.
Yeah, they almost seem
Stephen,
like
even if
antithesis in a way.
they do. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Maybe you
Something
should
to
have
sit
them
with
on the
there.
podcast.
Yeah.
If they want to be on it, let me tell you, the door
That
is
would be
open to
cool.
any. They pick their week.
You're gonna do the interviewer. You're gonna do the interview.
Yeah, we're just gonna
Yeah.
be the audience.
Last time we did interview our first author and professor, so there's precedent now. It hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
You'll have to join us for that too. Any other takeaways from the book?
Oh, there was one thing sort of on flow that I had noted down for myself of often we think about flow as that match of like high challenge, high skill. So something is too challenging and your skill can't match it, you just get frustrated. If something is too low on the challenge scale, you get bored. And they talked about like, well, how do you increase your access to flow versus just kind of relying on when do you have the perfect pairing? And that the new pairing they kind of proposed is acceptance, like radical acceptance and availability. And so, again, shifting from what's happening out there to what's happening in here. I feel it's kind of the theme today of can I really just accept what is and myself and so on? And am I available to more fully be present and engage? And that can really help you sort of widen the channel and widen your access to flow and live more in flow in that sort of day to day sense. So that was another one that kind of stuck with me of like, it's not about needing things to be a certain way, but how do I open to more of this?
Yeah, I think I might meditate's a strong word, but meditate on the like acceptance and availability. I think that's like a good summary. Like we've talked a lot about surrender and um and so accepting and not trying to control it, and then the availability of being in the present and getting
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, flow is a interest. I think I read that book in grad school, and yeah, to me it almost like vibe coding is like what flow is is my mental model for flow, just like,
Yeah.
and I know
Gotta
that's not
lose
the technical
yourself.
definition of the book, but I've never resonated with the word flow because I think it puts too much like pressure on work to try to like achieve that.
Huh. Yeah.
Um, but it's I get the concept of it too.
Yeah. And I love that, like, for me, also, it's a reminder that flow is not low effort or low energy, but it's more like, is it lower friction or you're not grinding or forcing? So, like, if you're in the flow, things feel super easy for those few hours, but you're probably really tired afterwards. And so, again, sort of separating, similar to like going for a long run, if you're, in good shape and it feels good and so on, is like it's high effort but might actually feel really good versus like I'm grinding through pain. And so often I think we feel like we need to just grind through things to be successful or to earn whatever it is acceptance, security, whatnot.
Yeah, it's so hard though because we've like in some ways we've been successful because we've like pushed our way through, but maybe that's not. Maybe that's like the appearance of that. So, anyways, it's hard to
Yeah.
grasp. Yeah,
And it's not to say you can't succeed that way, but what's the cost?
yeah, that's
Could
true.
you be even more successful if you were to flow more?
Yeah,
And would it take, less energy or have less sort of residue in other areas of your life? It's often sort of like a clean fuel, dirty fuel, grinding and efforting really hard and pushing is sort of that dirty fuel. And that's what most people do. And lots of people are extraordinarily successful that way. But it also comes at a huge cost versus what are the more renewable sources of energy? I would say things like wonder, like flow, are much more that.
Yeah,
So,
this is
which
like a
way would you
chicken or
rather
egg.
live?
It's definitely a chicken or egg question. Steven and I wrestle with a lot that I ask myself often too. Is like, I feel like where I'm at right now, I feel immensely grateful. It's the most sort of like open, wonder, curious
Hmm.
experience of life that I've ever had, and um, it's part of that is I'm like very grateful for how hard like 20s-year-old Adam worked to like create a space where I have like more life balance and I'm still doing something I'm excited about, and I'm in this place where like this company is like having big impact and solving an important problem, and I'm like an influential person in this experience of building this company. Is like it's easy to look back on the past and say like none of that happens if I don't work until 2 a.m. every day for like 4 years and like whatever climb super fast ladder person to like end up in X place. And I mean, maybe it's like you can't rewrite your past and see like, if I had been more open through the whole journey, maybe I end up in like a different place I'm more excited about, or maybe not, or, whatever. Like you can't reconfigure. And I suspect your point and the point that I have like tried to remind myself of is like, it kind of doesn't matter. Like what matters
Hmm.
is like, I'm here now and this is the now that
Yeah.
I have
What do you do
available
from
to
here?
me to sit presently. And that's all I can do. Um, that's all I can experience is like where I am now. And so regardless of what path brought me here,
Hmm.
I should I should enjoy the moments that I have right now to be
Yeah.
here. So that's what
And
I get
being
up to.
aware in the here and now of what stories are you telling yourself? So, like, I hear certain facts of like, you worked a certain number of hours, you worked until 2 a.m. X nights. You got this promotion on this date. You're in this current role now. Those are all facts. The story is I got this promotion. I got to where I am now because of those hours. And like, that's this causal relationship. That's a story.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly other stories available.
Hmm.
Um,
And it's not that this is inherently wrong, but just noticing, can I separate out facts from story? This is the story that I'm telling myself. Is it the only story available? No. Is it the story I want to tell myself and that influences how I move, how I do things going forward? Or can I play with that a little bit more? Try on some different stories.
yeah. Interesting.
It's a good technique to bring up too, just an everyday work situation. Emma like walked me through. We got some like negative feedback from a client, and she's like, "Okay, well, walk me through the facts." And then
Hmm.
like, what's like what you're telling stories, but that's not backed up by facts. And it was a good exercise to kind of unpack.
Yeah. Or in your case, David, I think too, is like there was a lot of assuming this is what they're thinking or feeling, the client.
Yeah,
Like, well,
yeah.
that's the story in your head. Like, you don't know what they're thinking and feeling, actually. You can go find out, you can go ask them. Um, but separate, we can get so easily carried away with one little thing happens and we're like, oh my goodness, they hate me. Like, what?
All right. Well, we're almost at the hour. So, unless if there's anything else, Emma, we'll open the floor and then we'll go into Delve Deck. We normally only do Delve Deck questions with Adam and I. So, we are letting you, as our third time
Ooh,
hat trick
lucky
guest,
me.
Welcome.
Feel
Yeah,
very
into.
special.
it's a real honor to be totally put on the spot on some question you've had no preparation for.
Not
It's
to
the
take away
best.
from like the deep work that we do on this podcast, but some of my biggest takeaways are from the Delve Deck questions.
Okay. Yeah, I love that.
uh, so, anything we didn't cover on the book that we should have covered?
It's never too late. Uh, and so many things are fluid. But I think we covered most of at least my key takeaways from the book.
Good. Okay, Delve Deck. What's your most cringe? I don't know if I want to ask that one. Okay. Man, this is too intense too. Talking about obituary. Okay. Well, no. Normally I just do the one, but these are like all kind of intense. What was your last straw with someone you stopped speaking?
Ooh. Yeah, that's not
Do you have
intense at
one?
all,
I
Stephen.
don't I don't
Uh,
think
That's
I
the
was like
lowest of the five.
yeah, really. What were these other
let's
ones?
do okay, let's do something else. I don't think there's anyone in my life, thankfully, I'm not talking to. What inconvenience do we live with because other people are jerks?
You said, wait, what inconvenience do we
What
live
inc
with?
because other people are jerks.
Hmm.
I don't know if I understand the question.
Is would like having to park your car too close to somebody else because they parked like 3 feet over the line in the only spot available in the parking lot.
Or
I
like
think
someone
that's an
cutting in
inconvenience.
line. Like I'll probably let them cut in line because I don't want to confront them.
I think I'm
Then
gonna
is
go
it
with the
because other
parking.
people are jerks or because you don't want to be a jerk? Or
So
called
other
out as a
people are
jerk?
jerks, so they're a jerk.
Emma,
because-
we got to right back to Delve Deck. So your question is trash.
Okay, what inconvenience do I live with? Is other people? Yeah, maybe the cutting in line.
Yeah. These weren't the best questions. We need a new Delve Deck.
What about getting cut in TSA? Like the person who like
Mhm.
showed
People
up
saying they
late
have a late
and is
flight.
like, "Oh, I have a late flight," and they like go through the line when there's
Been
no
that
TSA
person before,
agents.
though.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. You have to pay the world back now every time someone wants to come through. You
I
gotta
let people cut me whenever I can, like if they're late for a flight, because I have been that person before.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, last one more fun. Emma, what is more popular than it deserves to be? This is a little better.
Ooh. More popular than it deserves to be. Man, I may get some hate for this. Disneyland. Disney
Wow.
World. Like theme parks are like, yeah. I've never been there, but like they're kind of my idea of a nightmare of like long lines and yeah.
Where people cut you 2 for
Yep.
1 and the answer
Yep.
there.
It's all related.
I was convinced, Emma, we were gonna get like single serve wine as your answer. Like
No.
boxed wine.
Not necessarily. That can be
There's some
great.
good single serve boxed wines out there.
Yeah, there are actually these days. Actually,
There
one
you
was
go.
started by a couple women who are a year ahead of Lexi and I at the GSB. It's called Maker. They do canned wine from small producers, and it's awesome. So, highly recommend.
There you go.
I know they're in Texas, Stephen. I
Okay.
do not know if they're in Georgia yet.
Whole Foods or Central Market, one of those.
Yeah.
Maker.
They're
Okay.
also on United Airlines. They're sparkling wine.
No
Oh,
way.
Mm-hmm.
wow.
Yep. I
You
don't
need to
usually
talk
fly
to
United,
somebody
but
at
whenever I do, I'm
Southwest
like, all
Airlines.
right, I need to get that.
That's awesome.
That's great. Well, Emma, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a joy. I always learn so much. And yeah, we just appreciate the energy that you bring and the thoughtfulness and the wisdom to these conversations. So thank you for joining. How can our listeners get in touch with you? And also, we talked about you're doing retreats. Adam talked about the sand in the hand. You have
Yep.
some upcoming ones in Sonoma.
Yep. Sonoma in
yes.
Costa Rica. Yeah.
Okay.
So a few times a year, I host small retreats for sort of leadership and personal development. And they are my favorite work that I get to do. You just kind of go into this vortex and both have a lot of fun. It's really rejuvenating. And also, I think you can do a tremendous amount of work on shifting, old patterns or limiting beliefs and getting really clear on what you want in a few days that often would take months or years to do sort of in a different context. So Sonoma in October, Costa Rica next February. About half the spots for that are already spoken for, but there are still a few available if anyone is interested in joining. And they can find both more information on those as well as my newsletter on my website, which is caterpillarcollaborative.com.
And Emma Wood on LinkedIn. Highly recommend subscribing to your newsletter too. And you might see Adam and I in Sonoma.
Uh-huh.
Mention the Identity Work podcast for the discount code. No, I'm just kidding. Not there yet.
We're going to get there though. I love the idea. Yeah.
We're going to get there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you two so much for having me. This is really a pleasure.
Thanks. And we'll see you soon. Maybe to interview Dave Evans. We'll see.
That would be cool.
This show has been brought to you by Arvo Advisory, a new category of consulting company, half management consultancy and half executive communication and PR firm. Arvo works with great leaders to craft and communicate their strategy to achieve change and create valuable companies. Find out more at arvoadvisory.com or follow us on LinkedIn. And finally, if you've been blessed at all by this podcast, please remember to rate and review the show or share it with a friend. And with that, go forth and know that you are loved because of who you are and not because of what you do for work. See you next time.